Welcome to the Kraken. I'm your host, Crazy Canuck. Today we're going to be discussing the myths around refugees. You could write large portions of Europe's history as, oh god, there's scary people from the east coming and they're probably going to kill all of us. Typically, this conversation is framed as a battle between charity and safety. How many refugees do we need to take in to fulfill our charitable obligations to the rest of the world, and how much risk are we putting our citizens under by doing so? In the course of this video, I'm going to take issue with the entire conversation, so we need to get moving. Lately, we have seen a lot of misinformation out there about the dangers of immigrants, the dangers of refugees, what it's doing to the country, and this has been fueling desire for things like the Trump travel ban. This is not a new phenomenon. People have been scared of people that are different from them for a very, very long time. There's been a lot of misinformation about the danger refugees pose to Germany, Sweden, Canada, the United States, Sweden. And the reason for this is because they're an easy target and people are already afraid of them. There's an existing bias out there and it's being fueled by stories that will fit someone's preconceived notion of a situation. They hear something, they hear a second piece of information that confirms what they initially thought, and there you go. You have a very well-placed fake news story. What we're going to try to do today is cut through that and look at people's real experiences in Western nations with refugees and as refugees, and what refugees and immigrants as a whole actually do for North America. The first half of this that we're going to address is safety. This is the concern driving the Trump travel ban and most opposition to refugees and immigration as a whole. One of the main tools that is used to show opposition to immigration and refugees, or that it's not working, are opinion polls. The inherent difficulty with an opinion poll is that it's expressing a preconceived notion or an existing bias, and then people read them and it deepens the bias that they already have. Typically, when you see a story about the danger of refugees that's actually leaning on real data, they are utilizing opinion polls. And in doing so, they're hoping to demonstrate that this isn't working and we shouldn't do it here. A story was run on July 4th, 2016 by the Toronto Star that detailed a poll that asked Canadian residents if they believed that the country was doing the right thing when it came to accepting immigrants and refugees. The results of the poll showed that 53% of those surveyed felt that Canada should be directing their efforts towards bringing in immigrants that had the same values as them. This sounds extremely familiar to the campaign rhetoric that was going on at the time from the Trump campaign. Now, this isn't just a Donald Trump thing. There are multiple Canadian politicians pushing an agenda very similar to extreme vetting. For an example of this, I am including a link to one of them in my description. It's somewhat bizarre, a little bit incredible. It's one of the weirdest campaign videos I've ever seen. I can't. 74% of respondents to this poll also said that Canada should be more strict when it came to admitting refugees. Now, what should be mentioned here is that these are not experts in the field. These are not people who know how strict the vetting process actually is. They just hear it and think, yeah, it should be hard to get in. There should be strict rules. You should know who the people are. Nobody is disputing that fact. And especially when it comes to UN-approved refugees coming to North America, this is a very select group. It's really hard to be one of these people. The poll in question was also referenced by a website called jihadwatch.com. Jihad Watch, for when there's nothing good on television. I am not providing a link to these guys. Jihad Watch used this poll to push their own opinion that Canada had made a mistake in taking so many refugees and was now regretting it. They even went as far to claim that Canadians believed that the refugees were tied to a recent rise in crime. A recent rise in crime that did not occur. Multiple stories were published on jihadwatch.com about this exact subject matter with about the same level of reporting. The fact is, they have an agenda, they're going to push it, they're only going to select the pieces of information that are useful for them, and they're going to display them exactly how they want to display them. How do we escape this bias? How do we get away from this and find out who these people actually are? It helps when you meet them. When you're more familiar with people who have been refugees or the children of refugees, you get to know very quickly that their experience, while different from your experience, doesn't make them different people. Throughout my education career, I have attended class and studied alongside refugees, child refugees, and the children of refugees. And I have found dedicated, hardworking individuals, who honestly were probably harder working than I was, who love the country every bit as much as I do. When someone like Donald Trump asks the question of, we need to make sure that these people love us, that we're only taking in people that are going to love this country, well, a good way to get someone to love your country is to pluck them out of the ocean. Now, my own personal experiences are, of course, just anecdotal evidence. You can't take your individual experience with one or two people and maximize it to include an entire population. That would be like meeting Ryan Reynolds and Ryan Gosling and concluding, oh, Canadians are all very well-spoken and extremely good-looking. I mean, you wouldn't be wrong, but you just need to do a little bit more research before you properly came to that conclusion. So, if we're not willing to take anecdotal evidence, then perhaps we should look at a widespread study. I've included 3 in the description from the University of Toronto, the University of British Columbia, and Harvard. I will also be including in the description links to several news articles and editorial pieces that are less scientific in nature, but are generally showing you the same trend. What these studies show is that rather than bringing with them a wave of death and destruction and violence, immigrant populations are actually less prone to violence than citizens already in the country. What we are really talking about here is not an issue of safety, it's an issue of fear. What you will also see in this study is that the acceptance of refugee and immigrant populations into North America is in fact not an act of charity, but rather an investment, one that doesn't cost nearly as much as we're being told by certain partisan groups, and one that absolutely pays off. It is clear to me that this is not a conversation about balancing charity and safety, but rather opportunity and fear. Are we willing to seize the opportunity that is in front of us, or are we too scared? There's some hope in this area. The Toronto Star conducted a similar survey on October 25th of 2016 and got some different results. They found that 58% of respondents disagreed with the statement that Canada had taken too many refugees, meaning that they were either happy with the number or thought that we should have taken more, while only 37% of respondents thought that we had in fact taken too many. This shows that perhaps Canada is ready to push past the fear and seize the opportunity. We here at The Kraken thank you for joining us for an episode that involved a lot more editorializing than I typically do. I personally have a very distinct stance on this issue, and I wanted to build as strong and as fair a case for it as I could. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. If you agree or disagree, let me know down in the comments below. I will be responding to you. If you want to see more of me, hit the subscribe button. What was I saying again? Oh, right. As always, be good to each other.